What would the Gilded Age be without the titans of industry? That's a question we don't have time to answer. So, today we are going to talk about the titans of industry, these wealthy capitalistic men who either helped America become great or ruined the world, depending on how you feel about the whole situation. So, there are very wealthy people all over the place, but in the Gilded Age, we get these millionaires to the point where you're not just wealthy because you're a monarch or a royal family anymore, or part of that upper crust of the Jeffersons and all of them. Now you can make money simply by being nobody if you have a good idea. So here comes the American dream, and who better to encapsulate the American dream than some men who weren't necessarily American from the start. And remember, if you watched the other videos, we've talked about what it means to be American. So one specifically, Andrew Carnegie, is not from America, and that's going to be important in our American dream story here. But we're not going to start with Carnegie. We are going to start with John D. Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller is American by every sense of the word. He is born in 1839, and he is one of the wealthiest Americans of all time. So Rockefeller owns what is called the Standard Oil Company, and they still exist today. Rockefeller makes his fortune by dominating the oil companies by using a concept called horizontal integration, where his company is going to merge or buy out all the other companies within the same industry, essentially making it so that you have to get your oil from Standard Oil. And by buying out all of these companies, he becomes a monopoly, which means he is now in charge of 90% of the US market when it comes to oil. If you want your oil in the United States, you are getting it from Standard Oil, which means you are getting it from Rockefeller. He also is going to use the process of vertical integration to bring the price of kerosene down by going around network wholesalers and making it easier for himself to buy kerosene to make the oil, which will make him more efficient. And if you're thinking that sounds kind of unfair, well, it was, but this is where we are, and eventually the government might step in and do something about it, but no, they don't. John Rockefeller, Standard Oil, horizontal and vertical integration, lock those in. We also have Andrew Carnegie. He was born in 1835 in Scotland, okay? He is also one of the richest of Americans in history. He immigrated to the Pennsylvania with his parents in 1848, and once he's in Pennsylvania, he builds the Carnegie Steel Company, which he then later sells to J.P. Morgan for about $300 billion, if I'm reading that number correctly, and I think I am. That's, yes, $300 billion. And the Carnegie Steel Company is going to become the basis of the U.S. Steel Corporation. And when Carnegie sells his steel company to Morgan, he actually surpasses Rockefeller as the richest Americans of the time. And he is also using some of the same techniques. Carnegie uses vertical integration of all suppliers of raw materials. So again, if you want your steel, and Carnegie owns one of the steelmaking processes, like the Bessemer process, you have to somehow go through Carnegie to get your steel, to make your steel. So there's no going around it. He's making money off of everybody. Speaking of J.P. Morgan, let's visit J. Pierpont Morgan, who was also born in 1837. And he is a banker. You may have heard of the J.P. Morgan stuff they talk about on TV, or people don't really watch TV anymore, do they? Commercials, if you don't skip the ads. They do talk about Morgan, J.P. Morgan. This is the same banking family. And he is the head of the banking firm that will eventually become known as J.P. Morgan and Company. And he is the head of the multinational corporations like US Steel, the International Harvester, and General Electric. If you own the bank, you really own a lot. And he also holds controlling interests, which is like stockholder stuff, in most other American businesses, including Western Union. Yep, the same one that you still used to send telegrams. Well, I guess you still sell telegrams, but money transfers. Nobody's sending telegrams in 2025. Bring it back, though. Maybe we should. The Pullman Car Company, which works for railroads, Aetna, which is that health insurance company, and he is a shareholder in 21 of the railroads. So Morgan is making money. And finally, we have our oldest friend, Cornelius Vanderbilt, who was born in 1794. So he is really our oldest friend. And Vanderbilt is famous for his railroad monopoly. And if you watch The Gilded Age on HBO Max, you probably know about Vanderbilt. If you've ever been to Newport, Rhode Island and visited the Breakers, you've seen Vanderbilt's mansions. The Vanderbilt family is the head of railroading and shipping, and Cornelius Vanderbilt himself is actually known as the Commodore because of his fascination with trains and steamships and all of that stuff. I think he might actually have like a title in there too, his honorary title, and I'm not 1,000% sure on that, so we'll just side note that. Vanderbilt is one of the richest Americans in history. You'll notice the trend. They're all one of the richest Americans in history. Vanderbilt is also the wealthiest overall. And he works on the steamboats between New York and New Jersey, and actually takes over the Staten Island Ferry and makes it what it is today. So if you're ever cruising the Staten Island Ferry, you could just high-five the Vanderbilts because they're, with all their wealth, they at least gave you that transportation across the water. So, hey, thanks, guys. He also took over the New York, Providence, and Boston railroads. And then once the gold rush starts, he starts looking into transatlantic steamships, including a steamship line to Nicaragua, which is going to bring people up to California to mine the gold. He is just making money. Vanderbilt eventually buys up almost all of the railroad systems throughout New York and creates Grand Central Station, which was Grand Central Depot at the time, in New York City. So if you're in New York or Newport, Rhode Island, or anywhere in the general area of New York, or New England, although New York's not in New England, don't make that mistake. You can visit some of these homes, the Rockefeller home, the Carnegies, probably not because they're in Pennsylvania, but the Vanderbilt homes. Most of these men, besides Carnegie, are based out of New York because New York is one of the big cities of the time. And if you ever want to see how the Gilded Age wealth lived, you would be hard-pressed to find a better example than the mansions in Newport or their homes. If you go, I think they're in the White Plains of New York. Rockefeller's home, the Vanderbilt home, all of these places that you can go visit, and you can thank all of these titans of industry for the late-stage capitalism game we are in today. And whether you like it or not, this is where we are, and it is because of these men specifically that we have such a tight hold on business within the United States, and we have all of these workarounds for what is a monopoly, what's allowed, what's not allowed, and what is the government doing about it, or should they do about it? And that we will revisit next time.